Okay, well, I'm doing a pseudo PowerPoint presentation because I don't remember names, I don't remember dates, and so I need, a cheat sheet. So I decided that thinking about this, I've had a month to think about it, and I went through old diaries, old hard drives of old pictures, and just trying to accumulate a lot of information and then trying to pare it down. So it's just going to be a tiny glimpse of my life's journey. But I thought it was important because of my uh, being born in America that, we all have our own journeys and they're all different. Our conditionings are different. Our acquired habits are different. Our family upbringing is different. Just the countries we're born in have different attitudes. And then our influences through our experience as we mature in our bodies. So I thought it was important to go back and kind of show you where I come from. Okay, so note the red dot. Yes, and so that's Michigan. And I'm in the southwestern corner of Michigan, and it's the state that looks like an oven glove. I'm across the lake from Chicago. It's also referred to as the Midwest, the Rust Belt, the Bible Belt. And as you can see, I border on Canada because Canada goes up there. I don't know if you can see my mouse thing, but yeah. So that's where I was born. And this is an aerial view from satellite. And I kind of was mesmerized by that. So I thought, oh, I'll use that. Okay, so I was brought up on a farm in Watervliet, Michigan. And this is the farmhouse. This was my grandfather's house. And that's my dad and me when I was 18 months old. My father's mother with cat in arm, so my grandmother. And this is my auntie, my dad's sister, my mother, my grandmother, and me. So, and this is my grandfather and grandmother standing in front of these windows right here. And I was 3.5 there with a cat, of course. So we didn't have a lot of money. We had very little, but we had a very good life and we enjoyed nature. This is me at 4, and across this paddock, this is the chicken coop. This was the granary. Now those are all now gone, but on one of my walks from the creek, which was down this area, and walking up the hill, I had this, I don't know if it was a visualization or what it was, but it was when I was little. And I had this image of this place, which was Shangri-La, is what I called it. And it was where people were wise, and they were really happy, and they were surrounded by white-capped mountains. And, I don't know where that came from, but I had that image. And that was a real, one of those potent images that you have. It's kind of like, the Buddha had under the rose apple tree. It was kind of that kind of thing that really stuck with you. This was the house that I grew up in, and this was a house built by my father, my grandfather, and my dad's brother, and all the wood came from trees on the farm. So it has a lot of history. Okay, and summers on the farm were full of work, and they weren't holidays like my classmates from school. And I think I had a bit of resentment and jealousy because I looked at summer so differently. When they were all anxious to get out of school and go into summer, I was just thinking, oh God, now it's going to get busy and a lot of hard work. So I also had in the summer months the ability to ride my horse around the wild woods around the farm and really get into nature as well as the hard work. But summers went from June to October, and each month had its crop. These were tomatoes, so I assume that was August. But in June and stuff, we would have strawberries, raspberries, and then you go into cherries, and then you go into tomatoes and peppers. And then in the fall, in September and October, you got apples, peaches, that kind of stuff. So, and this is the barn, and this is the silo filled with silage for the cows. And this is when we had cows. We had dairy, and we also had beef cows. So summers were full of work. And winters, and of course the chicken coop's gone now, the granary's gone, but you still could see my grandfather's house across the paddock. And this was one of the winters I came home from university. Winters are long, and they last about 6 months. And they are harsh, and so they go from November to May. And in the fall, after harvest, the men in the area, all of them, doctors, lawyers, everybody went hunting, and they had their cabins up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or some other place in Wisconsin. And then the women stayed home and cooked and made preserves and were stocking up for the winter. So, you know, freezing stuff, and which went on all summer as well. When we'd have a big crop of something, we would always be preserving it as well as selling it. And so that's what would go on in the winter. And then in spring, it was trimming the trees, preparing the fields for planting, preparing the plants in the greenhouses. And so I decided, as much as I loved my life on the farm, I think I wanted something less physical. And I had a hidden desire to be a vet, which my dad wanted to be, but his father wouldn't let him because he had to come back to the farm. But my niece has managed to pull that off. Okay, so I went to Western Michigan University, and I was told in high school that I wouldn't survive at a big university. And just because of, you know, the naivety of being brought up on the farm, blah, blah, blah. But I did well, and I explored everything. I was extremely curious. I tried everything, the sororities and everything, didn't go with those. But I ended up with a double degree in psychology and biology with a secondary education teaching degree. And but I also got involved with the university's skydiving club. So I really enjoyed that. So I got into skydiving. There's a picture of me in the air. Also spelunking, you know, I thought, oh, that's great. That was back in the days when you could do it. Also scuba diving, and this is me at 12 on my horse Lady. And I always had a horse. I had Junior after Lady died. She had cancer and had to be put down. So I had a very active life. And then on November 13th, 1974, I was in a car accident with my then partner, and that changed my life. It wiped out a couple months of my memory. I spent 2 months in hospital, 2 weeks in coma, paralyzed on my left side, broken neck and traction. I had to learn to walk and talk again. I didn't recognize people initially when I came out of the coma, and then had to learn about who I was in my immediate past. My long-term memory came back in dribs and drabs, and I ended up marrying that guy who was a doctor, and we were married for 6.5 years. And after I was divorced, I was blessed with one of my skydiving buddies from Ohio who thought I needed to get out of the Midwest and see the wider world. But from this accident, I still have what they call the silent effects of head trauma. And I have trouble finding words. I have difficulties when I'm tired. I limp. So I have a lot of hidden symptoms, you might say. But anyhow, Bill was lovely, and he decided that I needed to come to Indonesia because that's where he was working as an expat. And so I went for a month. And he took me to Borobudur. So this is my first introduction to Buddhism. Knew nothing about Buddhism. And I was mesmerized. I'd never seen anything that was this old, and it was mystical and it was magical. And I was just enthralled. I just thought it was just the bee's knees. And that was in 1983. And my friend told me that if I could touch the Buddha's hand, I could make a wish and it would come true. So I touched the Buddha's hand and asked to find happiness in my lifetime. Little did I know about my future. Falling in love with my friend's best friend, it was another journey. We married, and after an unsuccessful attempt at running a business in Bali, we moved to Australia, where his family immigrated. And they were from England. My conditioning was go where your husband goes. And so that was one blessing that Paul gave me. And I am forever grateful. And I'm forever grateful to Bill for taking me out of the Midwest. And he just sent me this picture. He was going through some of his old pictures, and he sent this to me last week. So I didn't even know that there was a picture of this. So it was just a delight when he sent it. So I was over the moon. And now, having presented this talk, I can kind of understand my affinity for stupas and why I never really connected all the dots before, but now I can see why I have such an affinity for stupas. So I worked at the Austin after I left Paul, and I met young Mark Newton, who was then a Mitra, and he is now Siladasa. And I met his family, that's his sister Julie and his mom and dad, who have since passed. But he taught me to meditate in his flat because at the time we had nothing organized here. So yes, he taught me in his flat to meditate. And I thought, well, I'm open to try anything. So let's just see what this does. And and this was my very first order member, Gunapala, and he came over, and I think that was in the beginning when we were starting to get organized and meet in small groups. And I cornered him, and I was trying to make sense of what this order member was. What is this? And having only had a Christian, background, I had no idea. I knew Catholics, and I knew, Protestants, I knew Baptists, I knew Methodists, but I didn't know anything about Buddhism or any other religion. So he was the one that got cornered. And, it's hard to describe what an order member is. And then we had Buddhadasa and Davamitra, and I don't know if I spelled his name right, but I was going to check that earlier today, but didn't. Anyhow, they were amazing, and they would give talks and lead retreats and talk about suttas and various Buddhist teachings. They used words I couldn't pronounce or understand, at the time, but I was open to see what would come. So we also, back in the old days, we had visitors from England. We had Vajrasattva. This was in 1996. And we also had Kalamazoo back in the day. So that was one of the bonuses we got from being far away and not having a big Sangha, is that people of quality ability wanted to travel and help us. So that was wonderful. And then in 1990, Dayamegha and Vidyaratna came over from England, and Dayamegha was from Melbourne, and Vajrasattva is Scottish. And so then started the first women's study and women's retreat. I became a Mitra in 1992 on Buddha Day. And initially I found the single-sexed activities difficult because I had grown up with boys and men. And so I couldn't quite get it. And I thought it was unfair that we didn't have mixed things. But after a while, I got the hang of it, and then I preferred the women's retreat. So these were the people that were instrumental in my early Buddhist teachings. There's Dayamegha, Chittapapa, Megha, and Vajrasattva, and Sanghadevi. And I forget what her name is, because that was at one of the Indian conventions. But those were the people that were very influential for me. And I remember going on a retreat with Vajrasattva, and it was a women's retreat. And at the beginning of the retreat, I had said to her, I can't see any value in becoming an order member, you know, because I saw how hard they worked, and you know, I didn't want to go through that burnout. But at the end of that retreat, I had that aha moment when the bodhicitta of my heart opened and I got it. And I asked for ordination. I couldn't believe it. There you go. You never know what's around the corner. Never say never. And then we also were blessed with Sangharakshita visiting us when we had Pitt St, and that was in October of '96. And thank God these pictures have dates on them. Excuse me. So this was wonderful, having the opportunity to meet with him, and you know, he signed our books and stuff, and to find out what an ordinary person he was, but also what a wise, what a kind person he was. And you know, you really had the sense that he was fully present when you talked to him. It was just, you know, amazing. And I have been fortunate to meet him at several places. At Triratna when they had the stupa, they finished off the stupa at Triratna, I met him, and then I met him on the conventions as well. So back in the day, we were called Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, and this was the sign from Minto up outside of Sydney, where we have a retreat center, and we go for retreats and do GFR retreats and other retreats up there. Anyhow, this is where I was ordained. And they changed the name in 2010. Banty did, while he was still alive, and I think that was an excellent thing to do, because left to the committee, who knows how long it would have taken before we would have come up with a name. And the order in India had a different name, and so he was trying to unify us, and Triratna ended up being the unifying name that he came up with. So I didn't have an ordinary ordination. I was privately ordained here by Megha on the 3rd of January 2005. And I was publicly ordained on the same retreat by Ratnadharani She's putting on my case there for the first time. And that's Megha reading out and explaining my name, Amitasraddha, she with unfathomable or limitless faith. So that was where I was ordained. And I thought it would be good for people to see, who ordained you. So that's Megha, and that's Ratna Dharani. And that's me at my first public day of being Amitasraddha. And I took up the Vajrasattva practice. And I love this image of Vajrasattva. And this is the 1,000 syllabled mantra of Vajrasattva, written, I think, in Sanskrit or something. Anyhow, Chittaprabha gave that to me for my ordination present. That was part of it. And and then I committed myself. I was committing myself to the 3 jewels. And this was a lovely image that someone did at one of the conventions, a piece of artwork. And I just loved it. So I thought I would use that. And I like images because they represent more than what words can tell. And so dedicating my life to the 3 jewels, I dedicated my life to the Buddha, the gold jewel, he who attained enlightenment, the Dharma jewel, the teachings of the Buddha, how he got there, and then the Sangha jewel. And Kalyana Mitrata, or Kalyana meaning beautiful, charming, auspicious, helpful, and morally good. Mitrata meaning simply friendship or companionship, beautiful friendship, morally good companionship, or spiritual friendship, the red jewel. And there is this story of Ananda speaking to the Buddha, saying he felt Kalyana Mitrata was half of the spiritual life. And the Buddha replied, Ananda, you're wrong. Kalyana Mitrata is not half of the spiritual life. It's the whole of it. And I've always felt that as well. I think spiritual friendship is so important. In fact, I thought I would get a Sangha type name. So I was a little bit surprised, but there you go. And in the background of me getting ordained, there was a GFR retreat going on, because I had originally planned on coming up for a GFR retreat and got called on the phone before I got on my flight to say, if you want to be ordained on this retreat, let us know when you arrive and we'll do that. So that was unusual. Usually you get a letter and you have time to reflect upon it, blah, blah, blah. Well, that didn't happen for me because my father at the time wasn't well, didn't know when he was going to die or pass, and I would be leaving when that happened. So these are some of the order members that were on that retreat, which was the White Lotus Sutra, but I couldn't tell you anything about that because I was learning my sadhana practice, the 6-element practice, and learning about becoming ordained. And after I was ordained, I continued my study with Dharma and on Sangha or order retreats. This was an order retreat in 2007. And I really appreciated the difference of these order retreats because you didn't have to sign up for anything. Things just got done. We all know what to do. And they just flowed. And it was like a rest, you know. We all knew each other. We all trusted one another in the deepness of our hearts. And we all knew we were on the same path. So it made these retreats just so different from any other retreats I had been on. But I wanted to attain, go to international conventions and find out what the wider order was like. So this was the order convention in 2009. And I think Damodara was talking about the lineup and walking to, excuse me, the Bodhi tree, which was behind here. And this is all of us in blue making our way to Bodh Gaya and the Bodhi tree where the Buddha attained enlightenment. So that was a wonderful experience to be where the Buddha actually did his thing. So that was really good. So let's see, where am I at here? I'm gonna get myself lost. Okay, that was also when Black Saturday was happening, which I had no concept of whatsoever until I tried to contact home. And I had all these emails asking me if I was okay, and from the States, and not realizing that that horrible Black Saturday had occurred in Melbourne. So that was amazing in itself. And I also attended the convention in Norwich, which was another international convention, and had a lot of the Europeans and stuff. This was at one of the lunch breaks, and they had to separate them into 2 different times. And this was the Melbourne contingent at that time. I don't know if that was all of us, but yeah, that was where we were. And it was wonderful. That was in August of 2012. But I didn't know, enough about the Buddha. So besides going to the places that he had been, Vishwapani is part of our order, and he produced this book in 1988, and I would highly recommend it because he really spells out the life of the Buddha very well. He's a bit of an academic. Okay, so I wanted to do pilgrimage. So Badankapali and myself on the train, and we had many a train ride. We did a pilgrimage with the Lokashri for a month, and this is her cousin, who I think is ordained now, but I'm not sure what his name is. But it was really interesting, and I wouldn't recommend anybody do this type of pilgrimage. It could have been 4 separate pilgrimages. We traveled India, and by train, by small vehicles and buses, and anyhow, we went to Buddhist caves, we went to centers, we went to training facilities and projects, and we went to the important Buddhist sites, Lumbini, which was the birth site of the Buddha. We went to Kusanagar, the death of the Buddha, enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, his first teaching in Deer Park in Sarnath, Vulture's Peak, Nalanda. I could do a whole slideshow on that because that was amazing. This was under the Bodhi tree with our pilgrimage. And this was one of the caves we visited at one of our Buddhist facilities in India. And this is where they started this year's international convention, the Indian order members. And so it was such a delight to see that again and bring back the memories of the puja we had when we were there. It was just, yeah, it brought it all back, and it was fantastic. I found my resonance in the order with Vijamala and Sona with Breathworks. She founded Breathworks, which is using mindfulness for chronic pain relief. And I went to a retreat over in New Zealand and met a GP called Bodhanaya, and she was retired. She was spending a year in New Zealand, and she was a Breathworks trainer. So I did my first course after this one with her on the phone, and I became a trainer. And then I worked at the Austin Hospital And this was my 25 years celebration. I've been 31 years since, but Richard's still the head of our department and still a very good friend. And I used to teach meditation at lunchtime, but since I haven't been there since March, that hasn't happened, so I'm not sure what's going on. But I also did in-services for staffs from various departments. And from the Austin, we had Rita Singh, who was one of the neurologists who later died of a brain tumor, but she became a mitra, and I spent time with her in India, in South India. And of course, our lovely Braun. So they're part of what's come from the Austin. And we had what they used to call these medical retreats, which I wouldn't call a retreat, but you know, different definitions. But we would gather and people doing research and everybody in the department because we were so big. And Siladasa and I would always make time so that we could meditate and invite anybody who would be interested. So now I'm sharing in retreats with order members overseas on Zoom, shared the bodhicitta practices on Sundays and weekly chapters, order study, shared pujas, supporting online retreats, and keeping phone contact with my dear friends in Toowoomba and Port Fairy, and now my Tibetanese in Ipswich. We have Brisbane, and then we have Adelaide, and of course Hugh is in Western Australia now. So we're growing. I love this image. It's an image of emptiness, and I kind of see it, my vision of being filled with radiant light, which beams out of all beings. So may we and all beings be free from delusion and know the peace of awakening. May we all be free from reactivity. May we all find freedom to be loving, compassionate towards one another.